If you're trying to decide whether your photography business needs a telephoto zoom lens like a 70-200, then you need to watch this video.
Welcome back to the Camera Bag Essentials video series. By the end of this video, you'll hopefully have a better understanding of which circumstances we love shooting with our telephoto zoom lens and why we recommend the 70-200mm f2.8 for wedding and proposal photographers.
But before we jump into that, we want to introduce ourselves.
I'm Hunter.
And I'm Sarah.
And we're Hunter and Sarah Photography, a husband and wife professional wedding photography team.
We're also educators, and our goal is to help photographers build strong foundations in both their business and their personal lives so that they can build profitable and sustainable photography businesses.
Now, last week we continued our Camera Bag Essentials video series by discussing wide-angle lenses, and especially the 24-70mm f2.8 wide-angle zoom lens. Now, if you're in the early stages of building your wedding photography camera bag, then we honestly think that that lens should be a higher priority than a telephoto zoom like this one. So if you haven't already, please go back and watch last week's video.
But if you already own a wide-angle lens and are considering a telephoto zoom lens, we're going to jump right into the 4 situations that we always reach for our telephoto zoom lens and which lenses we think are worth buying.
So reason number 1 is when you just can't get any closer to your subjects during a wedding ceremony. Now, we know there's some photographers that have absolutely no qualms getting right up in the faces of their couples during wedding ceremonies, but we honestly believe that wedding ceremonies are a sacred time, and therefore we want to capture the best images we can while also not being overly disruptive.
Yeah, and of course there are some venues like churches or other places of worship where you're actually physically limited by how close you can get to the couple on the altar. So maybe you're not allowed to walk any closer than the guest who is sitting furthest back from the altar, or maybe you're just not even allowed to leave the balcony at all. These are pretty rare circumstances, but if you do have a wedding at a venue like one of these, you'll definitely want a good zoom lens.
But even if you are allowed to stand as close as you'd like to the couple and move around freely, it's still nice to be able to really zoom in and capture images like these that are really tight and showcase the emotion without standing directly in front of the first row of guests or, like I said, being really disruptive during the ceremony.
Yeah. Reason number 2 for why you might want a telephoto zoom lens is when you can't get any closer to your subjects during a surprise proposal. Now, we know not every photographer shoots surprise proposals, but we photograph them all the time. And while we love the wide angle shot showing one person proposing to the other down on their knee, we also love shooting with our telephoto lens to capture the reaction of whichever person is being proposed to, like here in Quinn and Bree's proposal.
There's always so much emotion that shows in the eyes and in the facial expression of someone as they realize that they're being proposed to, and we really want to capture all of that emotion without being right up in their face, right? So we're often, when we shoot proposals, we are kind of hiding in plain sight. We're on a picnic blanket with a picnic basket, pretending to just be like out at one of these locations. So if the person that we were coordinating with stands at the wrong spot or is maybe a little further from us than we originally agreed, we don't have to worry about it because we've got this monster of a telephoto zoom lens and we can still zoom in really tight no matter where they're standing when that person pops the question and get really beautiful tight images like the ones we just showed.
The third reason we reach for our telephoto zoom lens is for when we want to capture multiple angles in a short amount of time without moving our feet.
So this is especially the case during wedding ceremonies and kind of in those final moments leading right up to the kiss, where we love to capture a combination of really close up and also slightly wider mid-range angles.
In the 3 photos you see here, we were really able to zoom in and fill almost the entire frame with Jess and Tanner's kiss, zoom out a bit to capture a near full body shot, and then zoom out even further to feature just a bit more context of their entire ceremony itself.
And we were able to capture all 3 of those photos within seconds of each other and without taking a single step. Now, we shoot with prime lenses all day long and typically don't have any problem moving forward and back, really moving our feet in order to change our composure. But in the middle of a wedding ceremony, it's really nice to be able to capture, 3 photos really quickly like the ones we just showed you without moving around a ton, because we feel like that's a way that we can help make sure that the guests' attention is on the couple as they're going through that big momentous occasion rather than on us as we're constantly moving around and being really distracting.
Yeah. The 4th and final reason why someone might want a telephoto zoom lens is when they want or need to be far away from their subject in order to protect their gear.
Yeah, most professional camera bodies are made to withstand a little bit of dust and moisture, but the last thing you want to do is ever intentionally put your gear in harm's way. And there are a handful of situations where you might want to capture some tight images in what Sarah and I call the splash zone.
One example of this is popping champagne. Whether we're shooting a graduation session at our local university like you see here, or capturing a couple spraying champagne on their wedding day or during their engagement session, we want to protect our gear from getting sprayed while also capturing great shots.
So during these situations, we will throw on our telephoto zoom lens, we'll back way up away from our subjects, zoom all the way in to 200 millimeters, and then yell that countdown from 3 from all the way back there. And that's how we capture really fun photos with champagne spraying right at the camera, like the ones we showed, without getting our camera gear or ourselves covered in champagne.
Yeah, the added bonus is you don't smell like champagne for the rest of your day. So at this point, you hopefully have a pretty good idea of whether or not your business could benefit from a telephoto zoom lens. If you are convinced that you want to buy one, the 70-200 f2.8 is a staple of most wedding photographers' camera bags.
Now, if you watched our video last week, you know that we also recommend the 24-70 millimeter f2.8 and to a lesser degree the 14-24 millimeter f2.8. And the reason is if you have access to all three of these lenses on a job, then you have what's called the trinity of zoom lenses. You have 14 millimeter ultra wide all the way zoomed into the super telephoto 200 millimeter, all at a consistent f2.8 aperture.
However, there are two caveats when it comes to the 70-200. The first is that it's expensive. If you were to purchase a new 70-200 millimeter directly from Nikon, it would run you about $2,600, whether you were purchasing the Z-mount mirrorless lens or even the F-mount version for a DSLR. Although these prices will come down slightly with time, I can't imagine a new 70-200 from Nikon costing less than $2,000 anytime soon.
But the good news is that if $2,600 sounds like a crazy amount of money to you and your business, there are some other options, right? So just like we talked about last week, you can purchase some used lenses that are in good condition, or you can look for a reputable third-party lens maker like Tamron. We talked about that a little bit last week. When we purchased our first 70-200 millimeter lens, it was a Tamron lens. This was in the kind of pre-mirrorless days. And after doing a lot of research, it seemed like we could get a brand new lens, a brand new 70-200 that was maybe 70 to 90% as good as the Nikon version for about half of the cost. And for us, saving that $1,500 or so made the difference between whether we could get it now or in 6 or 8 months.
Mm-hmm. There are also less expensive f4 versions of the 70-200, which you can get from Nikon or around $1,300, or from Tamron for about half of that. Mm-hmm. The other caveat with the 70-200 f2.8 is just that it's heavy. If you are small but not swole like me, carrying around the 70-200 for an entire hour-long ceremony can be really challenging. The last thing that you want to do is to tire out your arms, let your hands get really shaky during the ceremony, and end up blurring your photos.
But even for me, after shooting with lighter prime lenses all day, I can honestly feel my wrists and forearms getting a little sore after carrying this beast of a lens for, an hour-long ceremony. It's definitely not a lens that I would want to carry around all day, which is why even though, we know some portrait photographers who love shooting their portraits with this, if I'm going for that really telephoto compressed background look, I would rather just get a telephoto prime lens like an 85.
So if we could summarize this video in just 1 or 2 sentences, it would be this. We love our telephoto zoom lens for wedding ceremonies and surprise proposals, and honestly, we couldn't imagine shooting in either of those situations without it.
However, because this lens is just so expensive and heavy, we don't feel like it's necessarily an absolute must for every wedding photographer. And personally, just in our experience, we shot our entire first wedding season, our first year of weddings, with just a 24-70 and a handful of prime lenses, and then purchased this lens at the start of our second year of shooting weddings. But guys, that is it. Thank you so much for watching. We really hope that this video has helped you figure out whether or not you need a 70-200 for your business and how to best spend your hard-earned photography dollars.
Yeah, if you want more helpful free content for photographers, as well as a community of people who are also building their photography businesses, then we would encourage you to join the Hunter and Sarah Photography Education Community on Facebook. The link is below.
Now, this video is just one of a 10-part series all about professional camera gear for portrait and wedding photographers or aspiring portrait and wedding photographers. So we would absolutely love if you would like, subscribe, turn on notifications, all that good stuff so you don't miss any of the other videos in this series.
Yeah, and if you're ready to go ahead and buy a 70 to 200 millimeter for yourself, we would really appreciate if you would use our affiliate link below. It's not any more expensive than it would be if you just bought it straight from Amazon. We just get a small cut as a thank you for making this video.
And finally, if you want an even deeper dive into telephoto zoom lenses, you can check out the more detailed written version of this video on the HSP blog. The links for all of these things are below.
But thanks guys. See you next week.
See you next week.